Okay. Sweet. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Like I said, it's looking like it's just going to be the three of us for now, and that is totally cool. It just means that we'll have plenty of time for questions and stuff like that. So if at any point I am maybe going too fast, or if it seems like something isn't super clear, or if it seems like there's like some weird tech issue or something like that, please just feel free to come off mute, interrupt me, and we'll talk about it. Yeah, this should be pretty easygoing with just a few folks in here. So please don't hesitate to ask any questions that come up. And I should also introduce myself. My name is Maria. I'm the Language Arts Lab Coordinator at GRCC, and I am very happy to talk to you guys about MLA citations today. So it's one of those things that, you know, it feels like it's just an extra step or an extra piece of work on our assignments. And I mean, it is, but there are, you know, there are reasons, there's a reason why we do this and things like that. And so that's kind of what I'm going to start with. What are they? Why do we use them? And then we'll kind of get more into like the nitty gritty of what does an in-text citation look like? What does a works cited page look like? Things like that. So in-text citations, we're going to start with that. In-text citations are the citations that appear in the body of your writing. It's not what's at the very end of your paper on the works cited page. It's just everything that is within the body of your paper. So in-text citations are shorthand references to sources that allow us to quickly find the corresponding citation in the works cited page. So if you've been working with MLA or any citation style at all this semester, you'll notice that whatever appears in your in-text citation is the very first thing that will appear in your works cited page, or in your works cited entry for that specific citation. And I'll show you what we mean, what I mean by that a little later. So why are in-text citations important? Well, while your reader is reading through your work, they will be able to see that you've done research. They will also be able to see that you are giving credit where credit is appropriately due. And then it also allows your readers to find that corresponding works cited entry. So as soon as I see your quote with that in-text citation, I will be able to use that in-text citation and immediately find where that quote came from in the works cited entry. So the basics of the in-text citations, we are most concerned with who is the author of the source or who created the source, and then what is the source format. So most often the very first thing and really the only thing that you'll need for your in-text citation is the author or who created the source. If you don't have that information, that's when it's important to pay attention to the source format. But in-text citations really are concerned with who the creator of the source is. What do in-text citations look like? They can look like two different things. There's the parenthetical citation. And the word parenthetical just means that something is in parentheses. So there are parenthetical citations, those ones that you put in parentheses at the end of your sentence. Or there's a signal phrase. And a signal phrase is almost kind of what it sounds like. You're signaling to your reader through writing a phrase, you're signaling to them that you are using this specific source. So let's take a look at what that looks like in action. So I'm going to pull up this writing resources page. We have on this page, this GRCC page, just titled Writing Resources. We have links to some of our different tip sheets that we have in person in the lab, but we've also, got these available for download online and also on Blackboard if you ever use our Blackboard page. But to go through some of these examples, I just want to pull up this crash course to MLA 9, and y'all all have access to this through the website and things like that. So you have access to exactly what I'm drawing from here. But I'm going to look at this first page, and we're going to take a look at the in-text citations. So here's an example. To cite information from a book, use the author's last name and the page number. So if you are getting information from a book, in parentheses, your citation will look like this. Parentheses, the author's last name, and then the page number, followed by a period. So with an example, we've got parentheses, Smith 82, parentheses, period. So we know that this is a book. I got this information from Smith on page 82. So to indicate that to my readers, I am going to put Smith 82 in parentheses. So the above in-text citation is in parentheses, so we refer to it as a parenthetical citation. Remember, parenthetical is just an adjective that means this thing is in parentheses. Big fancy word. Few things to notice about this citation up here. There is no comma in between the last name and the page number. No comma at all. Parenthetical citations belong at the very end of a sentence, so the period is on the outside of the parentheses. Got that right here. You can think of it really as like the last word of the sentence. And so if that parenthetical citation is the last word of the sentence, our periods always go on the outside. You will never have period, parentheses, Smith 82. It will always end with the period. So in action again, here we've got a quote with a parenthetical citation at the end. Simple repetitive motions like raking allow the brain to unwind, allow the psyche to decompress, end quote. Parentheses, Hellerman, 658 to 659. So I am telling my readers that this quote came from Hellerman, and I found this quote on these pages. And we've got the period at the bottom, at the very end. So that's what the parenthetical citations look like. And then signal phrasing is the other thing, the other option that we can look at for in-text citations. So remember, in-text citations can look like either parenthetical citations or signal phrases. Another method of citing in text is via signal phrasing. This method includes the source's information in the sentence. Another thing to remember though is that page numbers will always be in parentheses. You will never call out your page numbers like within your writing. Page numbers will always go in parentheses. But let's look at this, this example in which we signal phrase to the reader that we are grabbing a quote from an author. According to Elizabeth Nunez, veterans who receive dental care are 15% more likely to have obtained residential housing. And then we've got the page number. So the signal phrase here is according to Elizabeth Nunez. What is important here is that we have the author's name, right? Remember how on the slide that we were looking at before, we were concerned with the author and creator of the source. Well, that's what we need to get in the signal phrase. Because when we go and work through our works cited page, the very first thing that will appear in this works cited entry is this author's name. And so we'll take a look at that again, but this is the most important thing. We need to get the author's name in there. Same thing with right here. And again, page numbers always belong in parentheses. So we don't put according to Elizabeth Nunez on page 7 or on page 368 to 373. Oh my gosh, I cannot speak numbers today. We would always put that in the parentheses at the end. Say this were just a quote like from a website, a news article, and if there are no page numbers, then you wouldn't even need to put this in there. You would have the quote, you would have the author's name, their full name, and we know that this source is from Elizabeth Nunez. If you have a page number to offer, put the page number on there. If you don't, then it's okay. It's just a different type of source that doesn't use page numbers. Any questions on the in-text citations, either parenthetical or signal phrasing? I'll take the silence as a good thing, but please feel free to interrupt me. We are gonna cruise right through this stuff, so. All right, going back here, we talked about in-text citations. Now I would like to talk about works cited. So remember, when we are citing our sources in a paper, in a traditional, academic paper, we not only need to cite in text while we are writing about our topic, but we also need to develop that whole works cited page that has a list of all of our sources that we've used. And so these two things work hand in hand. One cannot exist without the other. They really, the in-text citation is what leads us to the works cited entry. And so it is important. So why it's important is, one, it shows readers how to learn more about the topic by, being that bridge into it is that bridge, from our paper to the source. We are kind of giving our readers information. We're giving our readers access to the same information that we had when we were writing and learning about this topic or this idea. Again, it gives credit where credit is due, and it shows that you've done research. Credit where credit is due, of course, is very important because it runs the risk of plagiarism otherwise, and we don't want to pass off others' work as our own, just for, like moral and ethical reasons. And it's also just it's a very like frowned upon thing to do in the academic world, because we want to make sure that we are being fair and giving everybody credit for their ideas and things like that. So, and then of course it shows that you've done research, which adds a lot to your credibility as a writer, right? When we see that you have done all of these specific things, you've hit on all of the source information, you've given us all of this comprehensive, full information, then I'm going to think, oh, like, Kylie knows what she's doing. She really knows like what she's talking about here. LaShonda, like really, they found some really, really, really good research. And I think that I want to learn more about it. So it's not just like silly, busy work. It's something that is actually very helpful to the readers. And it's also helpful to you as a writer, kind of showing that you are a credible writer who has strong ethos, strong credibility. So the basics for the works cited page. So we've got the whole page dedicated to itself, right? You finish your essay, you've got your conclusion paragraph, and then on a whole new page, you have works cited at the very top. So how does that kind of look with everything in it? You order the entries alphabetically by the author's last name. So the citation entry will always start with the author's last name. If you don't have the author, if there is no author name for this source, then you would just start with the title of the source. But we'll always start with the author's last name and alphabetize it. Capitalize each word in the title of the source, except for those little words, those little articles, a, an, and the. If it's a longer work, you will italicize the title. If it's a shorter work, then you will quote the title. And I'll come back to that in just a second. You will also use hanging indents and maintain your double spacing just as you have all throughout the essay. Hanging indents are a kind of like a specific formatting guideline. And if either of y'all have questions about that, then I'm more than happy to like show you how to implement or get it in there from Google Docs or Microsoft Word or whatever. But let's take a look at this italics versus quoting idea. So when we write out a longer work, for example, like Tales of Huckleberry Finn, that book by Mark Twain, that is a full book. It is a complete work. It's got a start and it's got a stop. It's a whole complete work. That would be italicized. Maybe there is one chapter in a book, like trying to think, maybe Mark Twain, I'm not familiar enough to have used that as an example, but maybe we've got one chapter out of a book. If we are only citing that one chapter, then that would be a smaller work, right? That's quotation marks. So Where we have a complete book, whenever we talk about a complete work, that is always going to be italicized. If we have a smaller work within a larger work, that will be in quotation marks. Another example of this would be an article found in an online journal. The online journal would be italicized because it's this whole big entity, it's this big online journal. And then the specific article in that journal will be in quotation marks because it's a smaller part of this bigger thing. So now let's look at some examples, and I'm going to go right back here. And just to refresh on the setup, you'll type works cited and center it at the top of the page. Don't bold it or anything like that. All it needs to say is works cited and centered at the top of the page. Alphabetized by the first letter of each source, which is almost always going to be the author's last name. Hanging indents and double spacing. So we're going to go through some examples here, and I'm just going to we'll look at websites, online journals, and then if y'all want to talk about books or TED Talks, we can. But I think that the bulk of what we work with are either websites or online journals. And then if there are other, more specific, more nuanced sources that you're working with, maybe like a YouTube video or a tweet or your professor's lecture or something like that, there are ways to cite that. So if you have questions about those things, please ask. But we'll just go through this to start. All right. So MLA format, works cited entry for a website. We'll start with the author's last name, comma, first name, period. In quotation marks, we will have the name of the page or the article with a period on the inside of the quotation mark. Next, we have the name of the website in italics, right? The website will be italicized because it's a larger thing. The article on the website is the smaller part of it, right? So it will be in quotation marks. So we've got the name of the website followed by a comma, followed by the date that the resource was created or published, comma, DOI/URL, and then the accessed date. So what does that look like in action? Here we've got author last name, Faluga, comma, first name, Dino. So Faluga, comma, Dino, period. In quotation marks, we've got our article title, Guide to Literacy. Oh, I accidentally clicked on it. Sorry, guys. Nice drawing. Sorry about that. I've done that before. Let's see. Guide to Literacy and Critical Theory, period, quotation marks. Purdue U in italics, followed by a comma. And then the date of resource creation is going to have this very specific format. It's going to start with the day, so the 28th, the month, which will have an abbreviation, and then the year. So for example, if we were doing today, it would be 29 Mar, M-A-R period, 2020, comma, URL, and then the accessed date. The access date is not something that you need to use all the time. You do need to use the access date if there is no publication date. If there is no date of resource creation, you absolutely have to put the access date. And we do that because it almost kind of is like it kind of covers our butt in a way. So let's say that, I'm reading through this essay and I know that this person accessed this article on May 10th, 2006, but maybe I click on it and it says error, article not found or something like that. And I'm like, whoa, like, did this person actually find this article? Like, is this a real thing? I can look at their access date and say, oh, they looked at it in May of 2006. It's 2022. Maybe it just doesn't exist anymore. So that's kind of the reasoning for that. And then, of course, if you don't have a specific page, then you just skip this part, the name of page / article. For example, maybe you are on GRCC's website and you want to get a quote from the president, and it's on the main page, the very first page of the GRCC website, just like this. Then you would skip the name of the page and you would literally just put, like right here, GRCC or Grand Rapids Community College. All right, and then, yeah, we've got the URL, period, and then the access date. Any questions on this? All right, let's take a look at the online journal. I think that one can be a little bit trickier because there are just more components to it. So same thing, author last name, comma, first name. And I mean, literally like same thing down here too, same thing here. And so let's go back up to online journal, author last name, comma, first name, title of the source, period, quotation mark, title of the journal in italics, followed by a period, the volume number, the issue number, the publication date, the page numbers, the database, and the URL. There's a lot of punctuation in there that we should pay attention to. We've got commas, 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 period, comma, period. We've got italics here. We've got italics here. These little nitty gritty things will catch you off guard, or they catch me off guard sometimes. So I always have to like really slow myself down and say, okay, like what needs to be italicized? Do I need a comma here? Do I need a period here? Do I not need any punctuation here? What's going on? So in action here, Hellerman, comma, Mark, period, last name, comma, first name, period, quotation mark, gardening on the fringes, a case study at City Tech, period inside of the quotation mark. And now food, culture, and society in italics. This is telling me that I got this article, gardening on the fringes, from this journal, food, culture, and society. This was volume 20 and issue number 4 of the journal. So right here, you'll see it's volume, issue, volume, comma, issue, comma. This is what that will actually look like formatted. So VOL, period, and then the actual number it gives you, comma, NO, period, for number. And then 4 is the issue number of this particular journal, followed by a comma. Then we will have the publication date. This publication date just gave us a month and a year, and that's okay. Always abbreviate the month if it has an abbreviation. OCT period 2017. The date is followed by a comma. We can see here date, comma. So we've got the date, comma, and then the page numbers. If it's just one page, then you just do P. If it's more than one page, then that is when you do PP dot, and then you've got the page range. Notice after the page numbers, we see that we are supposed to have a period. So I've got PP dot 651 to 669 period. And then we need the database that we found this journal on. So I've got EBSCO host. Database will be italicized because the database is also the big thing that holds the journal, that holds the article. And then we've got a comma, DOI with a period. DOIs are the same as URLs, but DOIs are more reliable. You will, like 99.9% of the time, if you are working with an online journal, there will be a DOI available. You should always use it. If ever you have a DOI available, use that instead of the URL. The only reason is because the DOIs are fixed links. They are never going to break. So like sometimes if you click on a link, you might get brought to a page that says like error 404, page not found. That will never happen with DOIs. Or that's like the purpose of them. And that's a very like gritty library science type of thing. I don't know how it works, but always use the DOI if a DOI is available because it is more reliable. And then you will end the URL / or DOI with a period, which feels kind of awkward. Like, oh, do I really put a period after this link? But we do, and that's how it is. And you notice that we do that up here as well, right there. So we've got all this good stuff in there. I want to talk a little bit about the database. So we've got a few different like platforms that we're working with, right? We've got the title of the source. So the title should be in quotation marks because it's a smaller thing within a bigger thing. That would be the journal article. The journal article is within this bigger thing, which is referred to as the database. Databases consist of like hundreds and hundreds of journals. You can think of the database as a library almost. Like a database is an online library that has all of these different books. The books are all these academic journals. And then all of these academic journals have these little articles in them. And so we will always italicize the database as well, because it is another one of those large, complete, containers. It holds these things. Containers is the term that the MLA people use. A container, something that contains a source. So. And then the books are relatively straightforward. If either of you have questions, take a look and let me know. But any questions on these works cited entries? How we're formatting that?
You said we can find that page, these two pages that you're going over on the resource, student source.
Yeah, exactly. You can just go to GRCC's website and type writing resources right there. And it's just got all these links here.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's where you'd find that. I can also just send this in the chat box to y'all too. So we've got it.
Thank you. I do better when I can actually see it because I can't remember it all. Oh
my gosh, yeah, nobody can. Well, if you could remember it all, then you'd be doing that quite very often. Yeah, it's always good to just work off of something, that's, is right.
Yeah, so I just want to print it off. That's why I asked about it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And if you are ever on campus, we do have printed copies here for you. So you could come into the lab and just grab as many as you want. We've got more tip sheets in person than we do online as well. We're just getting the other ones ready to get online. So if you would like, you're free to print any copies or free to come in and grab as many copies as you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, any questions on anything that we did here? All right. So that is it. I've got my questions slide, and then I've got a resources slide. If you would need help with your citations at all, that tip sheet that I showed you right here, that is a good resource for you. Purdue OWL is a good resource. And I have MLA 8 here. It's actually MLA 9. Purdue OWL is a website that Purdue University created, and it's online writing lab. And it has a lot of like specifics about citations. And then of course we've got the MLA 9 handbook, which has everything. If you have any question about MLA 9, then you can come into the lab and you can look through the handbook, or one of like myself or one of the tutors can look through the handbook with you. That's the Bible of MLA. So we've got that here if you need it. Otherwise, I would say the tip sheets are a good starting point. Purdue OWL kind of has that middle ground, and then an MLA 9 handbook has everything you might possibly need. Of course, your instructor, they know how to cite, they know how you should be citing for a specific project. Some instructors prefer MLA, some like APA, so just you have to know what form you're using. And then of course, the language arts lab, we're open virtually and in person, and we work with folks on citation things pretty often. So That is kind of my list of resources for you. And that's really all I had to talk to y'all about today. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I will stop our recording here.